Imagine an alien signal traveling through space at the speed of light. A radio telescope picks up the signal. Astronomers check until they're absolutely sure it's the real thing. That morning, people get to work, turn on their computers, click onto our newest mass medium, the internet. And then comes the news. Astronomers have made a mind-boggling discovery.
We are not alone in the universe.
There will be a tremendous number of people trying to figure out all the information that we can from that signal. One of the big questions is, should we respond?
Any civilization we contact will be much more advanced than we are. There are those who feel it will cause a planet-wide inferiority complex.
There will be a percentage of people who will become distraught. These people might need a fair amount of support and help to get through the situation.
And it could be important because we get information from advanced civilizations. Clearly, that would affect us. I mean, we might short-circuit, 100,000 years of human history and jump into the future thanks to the beneficence of these aliens who want to tell us stuff. I mean, that could happen.
The differences between alien intelligence and humans is going to be vast. So vast that I think it fundamentally will change everything.
Day and night, around the world, a determined band of scientists listens to the sky. In hope, they seek signals from other worlds, evidence of mysterious alien civilizations. They call their ambitious quest SETI, shorthand for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The novel Contact by the celebrated astronomer Carl Sagan is a fictional account of how the world would respond to the first confirmed message from outer space. Contact moved SETI from relative obscurity to front-page news. Sagan based the book's central character, in part, on the real-life Dr. Jill Tarter. She's a principal investigator at the SETI Institute in Mountain View, California. Tarter believes the search for extraterrestrial intelligence satisfies an ancient yearning.
People really want to know, are we alone? And that question is not something that we woke up 2 months ago and started asking. Humans have asked that question at least as long as recorded history. But now, there's something very different about right now today. And that's that for the first time ever, we actually now have the technology to try and do something to answer this old question.
The question of alien life beyond Earth becomes urgent in the 19th century. Astronomer Percival Lowell is convinced that on the planet Mars, he has observed an elaborate system of artificially engineered canals. His accounts create a sensation.
These were interpreted by Lowell as made by intelligent beings to keep agriculture alive on a dying planet. So we have these civil or agricultural engineers on Mars trying to keep things going. These views became accepted by some people, scoffed at by others, but what the human reaction was in that case was to figure out how we ourselves could signal our presence to the Martians.
The means to make contact seemed to arrive with the discovery of electromagnetic radio waves. Nikola Tesla, an eccentric pioneer of electronics, built an enormous transmitter in Colorado and blasted radio static toward Mars.
It was 150 feet tall. and was powered by one of his powerful transformers. And when he turned this thing on, people's hair stood on end for miles around. It was spectacular. He sent messages expecting a response, and he thought he got responses.
Though convinced he was hearing Martian salutations in return, what Tesla really picked up were a natural phenomenon called whistlers, strange waves produced by electricity in the atmosphere. In 1920, the great Guglielmo Marconi, inventor of the first successful radio, followed Tesla's example and pointed his own receiver at the red planet and heard absolutely nothing. 4 years later, when Mars was in particularly close proximity to Earth, the United States Navy silenced all its radio transmitters in the Pacific for 3 days. They were still hoping, in vain, to detect a cosmic hello from Mars. Over the next 25 years, as telescopes became more sophisticated and precise, the belief in Martian civilization all but disappeared. The canals, it seems, aren't massive artificial irrigation ditches after all, but arid Grand Canyons. But at the same time, astronomers were realizing the staggering enormity of the universe. How many trillions of stars there are, the potential for planets revolving around them, planets that just might support life. There were still those who believed that radio was the stepping stone to talking with the stars. Growing up in the 1930s on the Chicago South Shore, Frank Drake immersed himself in books that transported him to magical, faraway places.
When I was just a young boy, my parents told me there were other planets, and possibly like the Earth, and that fascinated me. You know, are there creatures there? I mean, to my mind, my little boy's mind, my first image was, oh yeah, it'll be humans, and the exact duplicates all over the place. What's that like? And of course, I quickly learned that was not likely the case.
Surely the results of the detection of extraterrestrial signals are going to be one of the most exciting things that ever happened.
In 1960, when Frank Drake, fresh out of graduate school, began the search for ET intelligence, he named his experiment Project Ozma, after the Oz books of his youth. His boyhood dreams led him to the emerging field of radio astronomy.
Those days, we had an 85-foot radio telescope, a rather poor receiver, and we could monitor one radio channel at a time. Today, our systems are 100 trillion times more sensitive than in 1960. It's not wild speculation. We have the means to detect other worlds.
Drake began listening for signals near the frequency of 1420 megahertz. At that wavelength, the element hydrogen emits a steady hiss. Radio astronomers use it to measure the distance between stars. Drake and others believe any advanced alien civilization will know the importance of hydrogen to radio astronomy and may use its universal frequency to send out a calling card to other worlds. Astrophysicist Seth Shostak is the scientist in charge of public programs at the SETI Institute in California.
Radio is a very good way to send information around. I mean, the aliens are probably doing all sorts of stuff, but radio is cheap. In other words, for $1 a word's worth of electricity, you can send messages from one star system to the other. We can do that. We can do that. They can certainly do that.
Project Ozma ended without a peep from outer space. But it established Frank Drake as the godfather of SETI and encouraged others to join him in his quest for the holy grail of astronomy, proof that other societies populate the universe. The Cold War rivalry between the Soviet Union and the United States ignited a race between the two nations that sent astronauts and cosmonauts hurtling above and beyond the Earth. It also fueled new interest in alien life. After all, many reasoned, If we could take these first tentative steps into the cosmos, advanced civilizations might be able to accomplish even greater feats of interplanetary travel. The space race spurred fierce competition to be the first to receive a signal from another world. Within a few years, Soviet astronomers declared victory. Discovery of a steady signal that indicated a distant alien civilization. Strangely rhythmic radio transmissions, such as never heard before, were coming from a celestial body they designated CTA-102. Everyone's excitement proved premature. What the Russians actually had found was in fact coming from what's called a quasar. They weren't hearing a big hello from the heavens, but natural radio pulses from the nucleus of a young, faraway galaxy. Undaunted, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence plunged ahead. In 1967, British astronomers announced a precisely timed radio signal coming from 4 separate places in the sky. They dubbed them LGM 1 through 4. LGM stood for Little Green Men. Another false alarm. In truth, they had discovered pulsars, dying stars that naturally emit radio pulses. No little green men, but the search was adding constantly to our knowledge of the universe. Since Frank Drake's first experiments in the early 60s, SETI has become accepted by the scientific community as a legitimate and important part of the research landscape. More than 60 projects around the world have concentrated on picking up that first otherworldly signal.
It's one of the few modern science experiments that just about everybody can understand. SETI is a fairly sophisticated endeavor. This is a hard thing to do, but everybody understands what it's about. It's very simple what it's about. We're simply trying to find out if there's anything intelligent out there. So it's an accessible kind of science.
I think I've got the best job in the entire world. I mean, I learn something new every day on a huge range of different topics because there's almost nothing that doesn't bear on this question about the probability of life somewhere else in the universe. I certainly have a lot of colleagues who would not choose to do this job because there's no guaranteed payoff.
For a short time in the early 1990s, SETI received money from NASA, but a budget-slashing Congress voted to kill funding after only a year. Since then, Jill Tarter and most of the SETI scientists have relied on private donations.
UWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over. EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Attention from Hollywood and the public's obsession with UFOs have helped in a lot of ways, but hurt in others.
Many people think that what we do is of the same ilk, if you will, as the pseudoscience claims and the UFO claims, and they don't distinguish us. And that reduces our credibility and reduces our ability to get support and to get the respect we deserve.
Although much of the public's interest has been fueled by our appetite for science fiction, the search for ET intelligence is real science. Recent discoveries in other areas of astronomy, as well as biology and physics, make the possibility of alien life more likely than ever before. If ET is out there, the odds are better than ever that we'll find him. In the vastness of outer space, we of Earth are reaching out, seeking confirmation that there are other worlds where civilizations live and thrive. It's a search that began small, just 4 decades ago. Carl Sagan was one of the earliest and staunchest believers in the quest for ET intelligence. In 1961, Sagan was one of a group of scientists assembled by Dr. Frank Drake to develop a game plan to search for signs of intelligent life in the cosmos. To guide the discussion, Drake ingeniously devised a formula. 4 decades later, it's still known as the Drake equation, a sort of recipe for the probability of intelligent alien life. Those at SETI believe the Drake equation may one day be considered as important as Einstein's E = mc squared.
The Drake equation is basically a fabulous way to organize our ignorance. It has no known answer. So it isn't an equation that you can calculate a believable answer. But it does really help us think about the probability of life being somewhere else.
It may be a little scary looking, but it's actually rather simple.
The Drake equation gives us a number, the number of detectable civilizations in space, which we like to write with a large N. We arrive at that number by making use of the information we have about the evolution of our galaxy.
The rest of the equation consists of a series of simple questions.
The first term in the equation, which is R, essentially gives the total number of possible sites for life in the galaxy, the total number of stars. Now, we know that fairly accurately. It's on the order of maybe 400 billion stars. We know that by looking at other galaxies and just adding up the total amount of light coming from those things, and that tells you how many stars there are. It's really quite simple.
With newer and better instruments, such as the Hubble Space Telescope, we're gazing beyond our solar system more clearly than ever before, seeing more and more star systems that are candidates for alien life. We now know that there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on every single beach of our planet. And more are born each and every year. In the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, it seems there will never be a shortage of star systems to explore. The second term in the Drake equation, FP, is the fraction of stars that have planets. Until recently, there was no proof of planets outside the 9 of our own solar system. But in 1995, 2 Swiss astronomers detected a strange wobble in a star. A wobble they determined was caused by the gravitational pull of an enormous planet orbiting close to the star. And in 1999, scientists found the first multiple planet system. It's orbiting Upsilon Andromedae, a star similar to our own sun. Since 1999, several more planets have been found around other stars. Harvard's Robert Noyes headed one of the teams that made the first discovery.
We've surveyed, we and our colleagues, several hundred stars now to look for these planets, and about 3% seem to have these giant planets orbiting close into the stars. Very different from our own solar system, but they are genuine planets in orbit. The real implication of this is that planetary systems are common, and very likely ones that are pretty much like our own may well be common. The reason we haven't seen the ones that are just like our own yet is that they're pretty hard to see.
When we are able to see such planets, we will have taken a step closer to learning the answer to the third term in Drake's equation. NE represents the number of planets that have Earth-like characteristics. Because it's assumed that life, as we know it, will need an Earth-like environment to thrive. Over the next several decades, the United States and other nations will be launching a new generation of space telescopes, many far more powerful than the Hubble Space Telescope. One of them, dubbed the Terrestrial Planet Finder, will specifically seek planets like our own.
And the long-term goal, say in 40 years or so, is to actually be able to image an Earth-sized planet around another star out to a distance of about 40 light years. Now, it won't be a really good quality image. You'll be able to see things like continents and clouds and oceans. Certainly nothing like a spy satellite photo. But eventually, this type of capability, using very advanced telescopes, will tell us, in effect, where are the Earth-like planets? Where are the planets that look like they could harbor life or that may currently harbor life?
That's the fourth term, FL, fraction of Earth-like worlds with life. Recent findings indicate that, here on planet Earth at least, life began at the very first possible opportunity.
Life got started here in a cosmic eye blink. We have a cooling planetary surface and liquid water by about 4 billion years ago. And we've got life at 3.9 billion years. And maybe we can push it back farther. So it looks to me, from an astronomer's, not a biologist's point of view, that life was easy.
Scientists know that organic hydrocarbons and even amino acids, the building blocks of life, are abundant in the universe. They've been found in meteorites, detected on comets, and in interstellar gas. The marvelous spark that turned these organic building blocks into life on Earth could have struck on at least one of the other 200 billion planets estimated in the Milky Way. What's more, our preconceived notions as to what's necessary for life are being challenged as never before.
The last 20 years have had a remarkable advancement on understanding the conditions that are required for life. We see both in laboratory work and in field work that life can exist in remarkably hostile environments far beyond the normal conditions we see in the rooms around us. And we find life at deep underwater volcanic vents, and field work by the biologists, field biologists have really expanded our understanding of where life can be found, so that a few very basic principles seem to be required for life. One needs to have some basic elements, but these are all elements that exist in great abundance throughout the universe.
With these discoveries, and recent indications of water on Mars and Europa, a moon of Jupiter, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence takes on even greater urgency. If life can exist in extremes on Earth and in our solar system, the odds in favor of life across the galaxy take a giant leap forward. Frank Drake, founder and president of California's SETI Institute, has seen the equation named after him become the standard for anyone seriously searching for aliens. With a handful of letters and symbols, the Drake equation seeks to find the number of planets with intelligent life in our own Milky Way galaxy. Drake's painstaking, objective research has silenced many of the naysayers.
It's fair to say that in the astronomical community and in the scientific community at large, it's widely accepted that there's life in outer space, that there's life elsewhere.
It seems more and more likely that the answer to the ancient question, are we alone, is a resounding no. The sticking point is whether that life extends beyond the microorganic to creatures intelligent enough to be able, or desire, to drop us a line. That's the next factor in the Drake equation, Fi, the fraction of Earth-like planets that not only develop life, but intelligent life.
All right, suppose you have, billions of planets in the galaxy that have life. Now, what fraction of those are going to cook up intelligent life?
100,000. 1 million.
And that's really a very contentious point, because a lot of things could have happened here on Earth that would have led evolution in different directions than producing Homo sapiens. I mean, if the dinosaurs hadn't been wiped out 65 million years ago in an accident involving an asteroid, we wouldn't be here today, okay? So maybe there's a lot of real estate with life on it in the galaxy, but most of it is stupid life, and none of it's building radio transmitters. That's something we don't know. It's not clear that evolution will frequently produce intelligent life.
And if there is intelligent life out there, do they have the ability, or even the desire, to communicate? That's the next to last factor in the Drake equation, FC.
Actually, I have a very, very pragmatic definition of intelligence, and that's the ability to build a transmitter. because that's the only kind of intelligence that I'm going to be able to find. Only a technology that does something to modify its environment in a way that we can sense over these vast distances is detectable. Talk about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, but in truth, it's a search for extraterrestrial technology.
There's a big catch, though, which forms the final factor in the Drake equation. Capital letter L stands for the longevity of an advanced civilization. Aliens on other planets may rise to a sophisticated level of technology, but that same technology and knowledge can threaten their total destruction. We've seen the potential here on Earth. If intelligent civilizations die off quickly, there's a good chance many have risen and then vanished.
Because of the rule out there in the cosmos is, once you get technological, you get dead. You destroy your environment, or you destroy your world with your technology. Then there's no one out there for us to find. If, on the other hand, the rule is that ultimately, in the long run, technology is a stabilizing influence, then those civilizations which develop technology, in fact, may become quite long-lived. And then there's a chance that we'll find someone.
Put them all together, and what do you get? A possible answer to the question symbolized by the letter N, the number of intelligent worlds in our Milky Way galaxy.
When we've completed this multiplication, we then, in fact, have this thing we were after in the first place, which is the number of civilizations. And if we put all this together, you will get 50,000 civilizations in our galaxy. A big number.
That's a lot of cosmic neighbors. And maybe they have a taste for travel. For while astronomers continue sweeping the skies to see if we're not alone, there are many who believe, or who are ready to believe, that contact by now has been made. Aliens have come to call right here on Earth. An early morning in the future. This is what you might see over your first cup of coffee.
I'm standing here in Washington, D.C., and I have to say this city is just buzzing about aliens. An hour ago, the House Technology Committee voted to upload the entire text of the so-called ET report. Now, that's a report that says a highly advanced extraterrestrial civilization has been contacted. To read the entire text of the ET report yourself, click the ET icon on your screen. Now.
Of course, this isn't real. None of it. Suppose, though, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, does turn up a galactic greeting. A radio message coming from a planet orbiting one of the 500 billion stars in the Milky Way.
There are going to be some people, of course, who are upset. There are going to be some groups that are claiming, you know, this is the apocalypse, and other groups that are saying this is our salvation and so forth.
Probably it wouldn't affect me too much. It's kind of, you know, it's one of those national things that, you know, kind of happens, but really won't, I don't think, affect my life too dramatically.
I'd like to go on the ship and see space, and to see them as well, to see what they're like and to meet with them and to find out what they're about.
I think there is life out there on another galaxy or another planet, somewhere in some form. And I think if we contacted it, that would be really great.
But you know, I think it would be very frightening, because I think if we got a signal from someplace else, or there was an alien being here and people discovered it was alien, it would frighten people.
I wouldn't like it. I would be scared, I think.
I would be astounded, I think.
Upon receiving the word of contact, there doubtless will be a certain amount of "I told you so" from the various organizations, cults, and networks that support the claims of people who say they've seen or made contact with unidentified flying objects. Pop culture historians Jane and Michael Stern are convinced that this belief in UFOs and aliens on Earth provides entertainment and distraction from our dull daily lives.
I think that people are really not that interested in real science because they don't understand it. I think UFOs or aliens are of the people. I mean, we made it up, so therefore we can blend it and mold it to anything we want. Just the notion of anything being out there in the universe that is not human is so much more exciting than finding a new hip replacement. Real science is boring, and UFOs and aliens is a lot of fun.
Well, the point is that with UFOs and aliens, the sky is literally the limit. Aliens and UFOs are capable of anything, but it all gives us something to believe in beyond ourselves, which I think human beings always crave. We need to know beyond us.
There's a very concrete precedent.
Orson Welles had just directed the famous War of the Worlds radio broadcast, the dramatic show that frightened millions of Americans into believing the country actually was being invaded by monsters from Mars. It was Halloween night.
Orson Welles created a radio program which mimicked live reports from the field, in which the reporters told people that tubes had landed near Grover's Mill, New Jersey, that Martians had emerged from the tubes, that they had annihilated the New Jersey State Militia, which was the National Guard of the time. They were advancing on New York City, and they were in the process of annihilating everything that came in their path. Many people were fooled by this, and indeed it caused a certain amount of panic.
War of the Worlds was 100% entertainment masquerading as news. When it was exposed as such, everyone thought this is one of the great hoaxes of the century. We now have maybe 95% entertainment masquerading as news. And the fact that we know that doesn't seem to make a difference.
As part of a huge 4-day celebration of the broadcast's 50th anniversary, the entertainer and mentalist known as the Amazing Kreskin was invited to give an outdoor demonstration of the power of suggestion. He selected a group of 70 people in the crowd. Without any kind of special effects or sleight of hand, using only his voice and mind, Kreskin was able to make them believe Martian spaceships had returned.
I spied one of the subjects on stage. It was a lady in her 80s. And we saw her walk down the steps of the platform. I thought, oh my God, is she going to this UFO she's hallucinating? No. We stopped it in time. She was about to, some 80 years old, grab out of the policeman's belt his revolver and was going to fire point blank at the alien she saw coming at her, which of course were not there. It was just crowds of people that were surrounding.
As happened with the 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast, radio invites you to participate actively by supplying your own imaginary pictures to accompany what you're hearing. Like radio, the internet invites you to participate. Surfing the net can be a transfixing experience, pulling you in and leading some people to suspend their disbelief.
Outside environment is closed off. There's no distractions around you. You have a bright light. It's almost like a hypnosis situation. A bright light, the light's dimmed around you. You're only thinking of one set of patterns. Now, interesting things will happen after that. It's very, very romantic to be able to narrow your attention into something, especially when that something does most of the work for you.
This is a recreation of a real website. The announcement on it is fake.
There have been hoaxes. There was a big internet hoax in the fall of 1998 involving a star that we had looked at, EQ Pegasi, that I had written up for an internet site, actually, and some fellow in Britain apparently put on his site that he had used a backyard antenna and had found real signals coming from this thing. That was interesting, too, to find out how even stories that, if you look at them at all critically, don't hold up, still carry a certain amount of weight with a large fraction of the public.
There are sociologists and government officials who believe that the world has more to fear from paranoid reaction to the news of alien contact than we have to fear from aliens themselves.
What you would find is a fair number of people entering into advanced preparation, laying in food, their own water supply, medical supplies, being armed, figuring out how to communicate with one another with all of the phone lines down and things. There will be a survivalist kind of element.
Now, what do you think the gun will do for you? Against the aliens? I don't know. But when humans find out we got food and water up here, well, I'm going to protect my family. I don't trust the government that they can handle this problem. When the aliens come, it's going to be big.
Do keep in mind that there's no danger in picking up a signal. After all, I mean, if I pick up my favorite DJ on my car radio, I'm not worried that DJ is going to, jump into the front seat with me and start molesting me or anything like that. I mean, just picking up a signal is completely passive sort of effort, and there's no danger there.
Although so far there have been no fully documented close encounters, it's impossible to keep people from believing. Pop culture will trump hard science every time. Yet despite movie and TV fantasies, we have seen again and again that the greatest thing we have to fear is not them, but ourselves. Mass media continues to feed and exploit our unending appetite for both science fiction fantasy and the truth about the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, though, the scientists searching for intelligent life in the universe have become media savvy themselves.
There's obviously a really strong interest in the public in the question of whether there is extraterrestrial life. There's a lot of interest in the sort of paranormal aspects of that, like UFOs and crop circles and abductions. And what we're doing is giving people a chance to actually work on the scientific end of the problem.
Dave Anderson and his colleagues at the University of California, Berkeley, have enlisted the help of 500,000 volunteer private citizens around the world to help search the heavens for the ultimate hailing signal. They call it SETI at Home.
The idea is that if you have a really, really big computer job that's going to take a lot of computer time, you can either make your computer faster, or you can divide the problem up into pieces that can run on different computers in parallel. It's kind of like having a lot of people working on one problem at the same time.
We record the data at the world's largest telescope. And then we break it up into little pieces. Everybody gets a little piece of the sky and a small frequency band to analyze. These small work units, we call them, these little chunks of work that we break up from our data at the telescope, are sent over the internet to people with these screensaver programs. It takes a few days to analyze that data, and then when it's finished analyzing the data, the screensaver automatically sends us the results and gets a new piece of data to analyze.
If SETI at Home succeeds in picking up an alien wake-up call, some ordinary citizen somewhere in the world may be credited with the success. But if you really want to get involved, you can do what Mike Fox and Bob Lash have done. Build a radio telescope all your own.
The name of this amateur radio telescope system is BAMBI, which is an acronym for Bob and Mike's Big Investment, and it certainly was a big investment for us. This is an ordinary 8.5-foot satellite antenna dish that normally would be used for satellite TV reception. What's different, though, is what happens once it gets inside the house. There we have no satellite reception equipment at all. It's all entirely designed for SETI work.
Right now, in the average home, you probably have more powerful computers than all of NASA combined during the moon landings. And so that gives us a huge advantage and with a very low cost.
Anybody who has the technical skills and wants to replicate a system like ours could do it probably in under $5,000.
The SETI Institute in California plans its own Project Bambi, but on an enormous scale. For years, the Institute has relied on the kindness of radio astronomers around the world, borrowing telescope time whenever possible. Now they'll have one of their own, dedicated exclusively to SETI. Called the 1 Hector Telescope, it will incorporate between 500 and 1,000 dishes stretched across 2.5 acres of Northern California's mountains to scan the sky 24 hours a day.
Occasionally we have gotten excited. Hasn't turned out to be the right thing, but it's enough of a taste so that it's going to be a pretty amazing feeling for somebody someday when that happens. And there's champagne on ice. Everywhere we observe, there's champagne on ice.
As time passes and conditions become more favorable for success, folks like Jill Tarter, Frank Drake, and Seth Shostak face a dilemma like the proverbial dog chasing a car. What happens when they catch it? What happens when they finally hear the signal that has eluded them for so long?
All right, here's the scenario. We picked up this signal, and it's going to take a little bit of time to actually verify it. It's hard to estimate, but on the basis of signals that we've gotten that have had us fooled for a while, I suspect it would take on the order of 1 or 2 days for us to feel confident ourselves that this was the big one.
So we have to get an independent group to see if they can verify it with a different telescope and a different set of software, different set of instruments, and so on. If they can independently see this signal, there are ways to make sure it's coming from a long distance and check it out thoroughly. Then an announcement will be made.
A highly advanced extraterrestrial civilization has been contacted.
We are not alone in the universe.
We've signed a voluntary protocol that was drafted by the International Academy of Astronautics and the International Institute of Space Law, which basically says, really check your data before you make an announcement. Don't cry wolf. But then as soon as you're sure, tell everybody.
I'm standing here in Washington, D.C., and I have to say this city is just buzzing about aliens.
If and when the epic news is revealed to the world, it's impossible to anticipate for sure how we will react.
Now, that's a report that says a highly advanced...
We can speculate, but the combination of wonder or woe, rapture or rage that will seize our civilization is ultimately unknowable.
I don't trust the government that they can handle this problem. When the aliens come, it's going to be big.
A lot of the public reaction to detecting a signal from life beyond Earth is going to depend on how readily we can understand what that signal is attempting to say. Now, it could be that there is a lot of information embedded in the signal, and that may take some time to extract from the signal, and then having identified that there is some sort of a message. The difficult process of actually decoding it would begin.
If civilization is sending us a deliberate signal, It will be probably sent anti-cryptographically. That means it'll be easy to decode. It'll have language lessons, lots of pictures. They will make it intentionally easy for us to understand the message. They might send their whole Library of Congress, all their music, their poetry, their literature, their science, their medicine. There could be huge payoffs. And another civilization that's more advanced than us may be in contact with other civilizations, perhaps millions of civilizations in our galaxy. So by getting in contact with just one, we might learn about a whole galactic community of civilizations. We may get the URL to the galactic internet.
The other possibility, and I think it's a more likely possibility personally, is that you won't understand it. It would be like, Australopithecus man, picking up a television broadcast, a television signal. He's not going to understand it ever. And we might be in that situation. I can imagine we get these bits and, people spending their lifetimes for hundreds of years trying to figure out what these things mean and never succeeding. That could be the case.
If such a signal is ever received, should we respond?
In the United States, in principle, any radio amateur, any TV station, anybody can transmit a response. Of course, this has people worried that somebody will give a response which is embarrassing to us or provocative or aggressive or something like that. But right now, there is no international organization that has the license, so to speak, to be in charge of any response.
If these guys are 1,000 light years away, what's the hurry? I mean, at least you can deliberate this for a while, and it's been suggested that you should do that. Maybe get the United Nations together and have some message that represents all of humankind. Well, I mean, that sounds good. Who could argue with that? But, as a practical matter, it isn't going to work that way. To begin with, we've already sent our message into space. I Love Lucy, Mr. Ed, they're already out there, okay? I just can't imagine all humankind responding as one. That's not the way we operate, is it now? I mean, I suspect that anybody with the ability to build a transmitter and with a backyard antenna is going to try sending their own personal philosophies into space.
Together into one place and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land.
We must also accept the possibility that the signal will not come in our lifetime, or our children's, or ever. Yet there's a well-known saying in the world of searching for extraterrestrial intelligence. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
They may not be very interested in us. If they're very advanced, we may look like ants to them, and they've probably seen a lot of primitive civilizations like us, and they probably just say, well, that's the millionth civilization that's developing, and they're going to wait a little while until we get a little more interesting.
Hippity hoppity, hippity hoppity, hippity hopping over hill and dale.
Carl Sagan, the scientist who captivated Americans with the wonders of astronomy, believed the search for ET intelligence was important, whether we ever locked onto a signal or not.
If there's a plausible argument that there isn't anybody out there, bearing in mind that we can be wrong, we ought to keep looking, because the question is of the most supreme importance. It calibrates our place in the universe. It tells us who we are. And so it is worthwhile trying to find other civilizations, I would say, no matter what.
Aliens may not exist. They may be ignoring us until we grow up, or they may be quietly observing us. They may even be waving frantically to get our attention, and we haven't noticed. Yet. If we ever do make contact, we can be sure that our response and range of emotions will be as varied as humankind itself. Until that day, we must remain wary of hyperbole and hoaxes, view all claims with healthy skepticism, yet at the same time, prepare ourselves for the most earth-shattering news in history. we truly are not alone.
There was one night where I recall waking up suddenly, and across from my bed was a closet that was missing one door, and I had hung a curtain over the side of the closet without the door. I wasn't aware of what time it was. I was just frightened. I don't recall dreaming or anything like that. I was terrified, and I could make out a figure in there.
How far away is he from you? Like 5 feet?
No, he's right in front of me.
Okay, now, so you get a good look at him now.
Yeah.
Describe him to me.
Small body. You can see his ribs. No hair. Smooth head. He doesn't say anything.
They allegedly number in the hundreds of thousands. Men and women who swear on their lives they have had extraordinary, inexplicable, sometimes invasive close encounters with aliens. Whether or not they are telling the truth is at the center of a worldwide controversy. Are alien visitations for real? And if there is life on other planets, have they been using Earth as a cosmic biology experiment? UFO and alien experts, as well as scientists who believe life exists beyond Earth but has yet to be found, are searching for clues and answers. The age-old quest to decipher if we are only part of a vast cosmic community has spawned many visions and stories of alien creatures walking the Earth. Despite the absence, so far, of credible scientific evidence, there remains a yearning to end our terrestrial loneliness and discover we're not the only planet that wonders and dreams about other worlds. This yearning also has prompted mainstream science to dedicate more and more time and money to the search for alien life. Armed with new findings from a grand array of telescopes and space probes, scientists are convinced that within the next 2 decades, they will be able to track down our closest ET neighbors, if they exist. Alien abduction proponents and their research subjects insist the aliens are already here. They point to the accounts of people such as Bob Smith and his mother Susan, who claim to have witnessed paranormal encounters with extraterrestrials. Sometimes the experiences are so traumatic. To find answers, those who believe they have encountered aliens turn to freelance abduction detectives like Bud Hopkins. Hopkins, an artist in New York City, became intrigued with UFOs more than 25 years ago. Ever since, he has devoted himself to investigating tales of alien encounters and abductions.
I remember my daughter would come down in the morning saying, what the heck was my brother doing all night long, because I couldn't sleep because there was so much knocking going on in his room. Now, he shared the room with his younger brother, and they were petrified of the closet. They were petrified of the closet in that room. It was an attic bedroom. They were both afraid of the closet, and my daughter would complain about this banging noise she would hear in the boys' room. And there was one time where my daughter literally flew out of her room and down the stairs.
How do you mean flew?
I mean flew. I mean flew. I mean her feet did not touch the ground.
I was in the living room fooling around with something, plastic horses or something. My parents were cleaning up from dinner. My little brother was asleep under the dinner table, which was his habit at the time. and my sister was going up to her bedroom to continue with her homework or whatever. When I heard her reach her room, I was suddenly aware of a distant but loud sound, something yelling, and she screamed. Came flying down the stairs. She told us that she went into her room and there was a small being sitting on her bed, and when she entered the room, it screamed her name, and that being screaming her name is what I heard.
What I essentially say I can no longer disbelieve is the idea that we are being visited by some non-human intelligences who have an incredibly advanced technology. Where they come from, I have no idea, but that they are picking up human beings in a regular, almost scheduled, repetitive series of procedures, which has a particular goal, that they are taking our DNA, sperm and ova samples, tissue samples and so forth, mixing it with their own and trying to produce some kind of hybrid mix.
That is, a staggering notion. It really requires the sort of evidence we haven't seen. And yet, on the other hand, attempts to explain it by known mechanisms really have not worked.
For years, Jerome Clark has studied UFO and alien abduction phenomena. He likens today's tales of flying saucers and visitors to ancient accounts of fairies and mermaids.
In historical time, as well as ancient time, people believed in the existence of things like fairies and merfolk because some people experienced them. These were experientially real. Now, that doesn't mean that fairies and mermaids live in the world, which I certainly do not believe, but I also believe that people did have vivid, extraordinary experiences which seemed extremely real to them.
Stories of alien abduction, however, date back only to the late 1950s. Roughly the same time the United States and Russia began launching man into space. In September 1961, Betty and Barney Hill say they saw a UFO while driving along a dark New Hampshire road. When they got home, the Hills were 2 hours later than expected, a missing block of time neither could explain. Under hypnosis, a sometimes controversial method of retrieving memories, each claimed they had been taken aboard an alien spacecraft. Speaking with its occupants and undergoing medical examinations. Their account became a best-selling book and a made-for-television movie. A short time after the TV movie's airing, in 1975, 6 loggers in northeastern Arizona see a bright light in the sky. Travis Walton gets out of their truck for a closer look, and according to the others, is struck down by a blue bolt of light. Panicked, the others flee, thinking Walton dead. 5 days later, he reappears, dazed and confused. Under hypnosis, he too tells a peculiar tale of being lifted into a spacecraft, surrounded by several small beings, and undergoing surgery. Walton also received the Hollywood treatment in the feature film Fire in the Sky. Walton staunchly defends his story. Perhaps the most famous of alleged alien abductees is novelist Whitley Strieber. He writes how he was taken from his upstate New York cabin into the chamber of an alien ship, where he was operated on and internally probed. This has resulted in a number of books from Strieber, including the bestseller Communion. The Hills in '61 were among the first to come forward, but thousands have followed. The experiences of Bob, Susan, and the many others Bud Hopkins interviews convince him that aliens target specific families, often over a period of years, perhaps to maintain a genetic link among abductees. He also believes aliens do not cover their tracks, and have left physical evidence of their presence.
The point is, if something physical is happening, which involves some kind of an incision, it's a logical question to ask, well, is there any sign of that after this is over? And in fact, there is. They fall in certain patterns over and over again. Patterns are generally the straight line cut, almost like a surgical cut. There are a number of other types of marks that turn up all the time. The scoop marks, which are generally roundish, which are a serious depression, sometimes large, sometimes small. How did you get that?
I'm not sure. Where I don't know. Actually, I don't know at all. Because it's so centered there.
Yeah,
it's just an interesting.
Quite geometrically correct.
Yeah, it's right
yes.
smack in the middle. So I think it's an interesting mark.
People who believe they've been abducted come from every walk of life, every class and race, virtually every nationality. Even the skeptical have come to understand that most of the abductees truly believe something has happened to them. Co-author of The Abduction Enigma, William Cohn is a clinical psychologist who believes there are more down-to-earth reasons for abductee scars.
In general, these people are very sincere. They truly believe this happened to them. As far as the scoop marks, things like that, take any person off the street, take a good look at their body, and you're going to find a scar, a cut, a mark someplace that they've never noticed before because it hasn't been important. So you're able to, through some effort, take some disparate pieces of evidence and weave them into a fascinating story. The fact that you can do that doesn't make it true. Suppose you wake up some morning and you have a scar on your body and you can't explain it, then the answer is you can't explain it. I mean, just because you have a cut, a bruise, or a scar doesn't mean aliens did it.
Similar cuts and marks were pointed to as proof of sorcery during the Salem witch trials in 1692. Whether abductee scars are natural or the work of aliens is just part of a fiery controversy. It challenges not only the stories of alien abduction, but the methods used to uncover them.
Are there any other memories, experiences from your childhood you want to bring up?
There was one night where I recall waking up suddenly. I wasn't aware of what time it was. I was shot up in bed. Across from my bed was a closet that was missing one door, and I had hung a curtain over the side of the closet without the door. I saw a small white hand grasp the curtain from the inside and pull it to the side as if to open it. And I could make out a figure in there. But I was terrified. And I slammed the light switch and screamed at the top of my lungs, "No." The light came on. I recall being blinded by it, and I saw the curtain flop back into place. The next thing I remember is waking up flat on my back in bed with the bedclothes on the floor, and it was already morning by this point. And I discovered a small scab on the corner of my eye, perfectly scabbed over a circle.
Every story of alien abduction has an explanation. It may be imagined. It may be real. Perhaps UFOs are kidnapping humans, but it could also be an expression of our inner fears, maybe even our desires.
An abduction is a wonderful antidote for anyone who feels alone, lonely, and detached. Because here, after all, whether for sexual reasons or any reasons whatsoever, here is a being, usually a very intelligent being, who's interested in you. They want you, they want parts of you, they want to inspect you, they want to examine you. How many people go through life yearning for that from another human being and not getting it? And in alien abduction, you get that royally.
Feelings like fear and desire, such as experienced by abductees, can be inspired by things that really happened, or by things that never did, but that somehow became real in the mind. Psychologists have offered another possible explanation. There is a common condition called sleep paralysis, a waking dream in which the body is unable to move, or in which, during the twilight between dreaming and alertness, one senses a foreign presence.
Almost half of us in our lives will at some time have a sleep paralysis episode. This is a very common experience, yet almost no one knows what it's called or what it is, or that it is a common experience. And the closest thing we have in our pop culture to that experience is alien abduction.
Those in the sleep paralysis camp note that the vast majority of these incidents happen at night, when the victims are in bed. Abduction researcher and believer Bud Hopkins thinks there's another logical reason for that.
I think they're more at night because obviously it's easier to mask and conceal the activity. This is a covert phenomenon. And of course at night, if somebody is wakened up and there's someone in the room and they fall asleep and they wake up in the morning and they're put back to sleep, they can easily call it a dream, much more easily than if they lose 2 hours on a 15-minute drive back from the supermarket in the middle of the afternoon. The difference is
Jim Delatoso is a successful computer inventor and engineer who moonlights as a crack UFO investigator.
A single object that's flying, changing shape, having lights flying. People that say that they have been abducted have been kidnapped. They've been taken against their will. They've been poked and probed. They've been usually hypnotized in an elegant, high-tech way so that when they are brought back, they don't remember. They report thousands of cases across the board, very similar pieces of information. They were short, gray-looking, smooth skin, almond eyes-looking creatures.
It is time, Earthman.
Our popular culture has a long history of portraying alien life forms as looking basically human. In addition to depictions of greys, there have been Nordics, lizard men, hairy dwarfs, to mention just a few. Biologist Clifford Pickover has given a lot of thought to the difference between the way we imagine aliens and how they might in reality appear.
Humans, I think, are rather special in the sense that if you had a world even similar to Earth, which is unlikely because of many reasons in the environment, that evolution is so chaotic you wouldn't evolve something that looks so much like us. I think some of the typical aliens that we hear about and see in the literature, these greys and these Nordics, they're all too humanoid. It doesn't make sense to me that these creatures would evolve on planets with totally different conditions. The appearance of aliens as reported by alien abductees seems to evolve through time. In the early 40s, we had little green men. And only in the early 60s, about 1961, did we get creatures something like this with the large black wraparound eyes. It's very doubtful that evolution would follow a path that led to this type of creature on other worlds. One interesting model for an alien would be an octopus. Not many people realize that the octopus is a highly intelligent creature. Some say it's about equivalent to a dog, which is remarkable for such a strange creature. Its brain is highly textured, it's weird, it wraps around the esophagus. Octopuses are highly emotional. Their emotions are revealed with their color changes. They can't even shield their emotions from us. One wonders if we met an alien race that couldn't shield their thoughts from us, how that would affect our negotiations. Likewise, what if all our inner thoughts were revealed to alien life just by their looking at us or sensing things about us, how that would affect their interactions with us.
UFO and alien enthusiasts may differ from mainstream scientists over ideas of what aliens might look like. What is less and less in contention is their actual existence. Even, surprisingly, right within our own solar system. We are fascinated by alien life forms. From the pictures in books and magazines, to the surreal images at the movies. As it turns out, we may have no further to look than the cosmic equivalent of our own backyard, the solar system. Recent pictures and other data sent back from the Galileo space probe have shown signs of water on one of Jupiter's moons. What's more, the Mars Pathfinder has detected evidence of ancient water on our nearest planetary neighbor. H2O, of course, is a key ingredient to life. In coming years, NASA plans to launch another probe toward Jupiter and its moons to take a closer look. Almost all NASA's missions in the coming decades are aimed at finding evidence of alien life forms. Its Origins program, for example, is searching for the origins of life itself in the universe.
The Origins program really brings together what is in fact a very ancient human quest, which is to look for life in any environment we can find it. It's a spirit of exploration or adventure. It goes back 2,000 years with the ancient Greeks, wondering, was there life beyond the Earth? What we now have and what NASA's recognized is we have the technological ability to actually investigate these questions directly.
I have the coolest job in the world. I get to look for life on other planets. And in terms of what that would mean to me personally and to humans in general, I mean, come on. To answer the question, are we alone out there? I can hardly think of any bigger question.
Over the last few years, evidence of at least the proper conditions for alien life has caused considerable excitement. When the Galileo spacecraft sent back images of Europa, one of Jupiter's 4 largest moons, the pictures distinctly showed the surface blanketed by a crust of ice.
The high-resolution data from Galileo have given us even more hope that there really is a liquid ocean underneath there. We see things that look like cracked ice and basically frozen in place icebergs on the surface. And by measuring the gravity of Europa, we've been able to determine that the thickness of this water layer combination of ice and water must be about 100 kilometers thick, 60 miles.
Scientists theorize a deep ocean, warmed by a hot inner core, which itself is heated by internal friction from gravity between Europa and its mother planet, Jupiter. The answer to whether life could exist in such environments may already have been found, right here on Earth. More than a mile beneath the sea, near the coast of Ecuador, just off the Galapagos Islands, where Darwin contemplated evolution, lies the Galapagos Rift. Ancient volcanic fissures in the ocean floor are shrouded by never-ending darkness.
Here's a place where the pressures are great enough to crush a ship like the Titanic, like an empty Pepsi can, where there's toxic chemicals coming out of the ground that are superheated to 750 degrees Fahrenheit, where there's never been any sunlight. Here's a place where there should be no life at all, and yet we're finding more life than we can ever imagined. In some places, we're finding a diversity and density of life that are higher than the tropical rainforests. And this has totally revolutionized our view of life on this planet and in other places in the solar system as well.
In 1977, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute sent a 3-man submersible into the Galapagos Rift's deadly waters. Researchers were stunned to find a bizarre array of creatures. The volcanic chimneys teemed with red, plushy-headed, mouthless tube worms. giant clams fed off bacteria that thrived on chemicals generated by the intense heat. The science fiction-like sea organisms found deep within the Galapagos Rift have scientists reevaluating the odds of life beyond Earth. One of those potential environments for alien life forms may be the ocean that many believe lies beneath the ice of Jupiter's moon, Europa. NASA extended the Galileo mission an additional 2 years, in part so it could focus on Europa, amassing a collection of close-ups that may, under further analysis, hint at the existence of underwater alien life there.
In the long run, I think NASA is very interested in sending a number of missions to Europa, first to map it, and then the longer term to put down landers and start trying to break down below the ice and see what we can find.
In addition to the Europa Orbiter mission, NASA hopes one day to launch a mission to Europa's surface. Remote-controlled underwater probes called hydrobots would melt through the ice, hunting for alien life forms in the waters beneath.
Ultimately, I have friends that are oceanographers who are just champing at the bit, waiting to get a mission to Europa where they might be able to bore down or melt down and actually get a little robot submarine in the ocean of Europa. We believe that that environment is in many ways similar to the environment on the Earth's ocean floors. Maybe the Earth's ocean floors many billion years ago when life began forming on the Earth. You get lots of different opinions from different scientists as to whether then it's likely that life would form or not likely that life would form. In a very real sense, the only way to find out is to go and look, because our theories just aren't good enough to tell us that. We have only one example of a planet with life on it that we can study, and that's right here. To answer that question about how likely it is someplace else is you've got to go look in those places.
There's another icy, forbidding place right here on Earth that may offer clues to life on another planet. In Antarctica, scientists have discovered the rocky remnants of millennia of meteor showers that may contain fossil traces of alien organisms. These rocks could offer a partial answer to how life evolves. A team from NASA's Johnson Space Center thinks it may have uncovered signs of past extraterrestrial life within one of these Antarctic meteorites. Some believe tiny microbes embedded in the Martian crust were cast up into space as debris when a huge meteorite slammed into that planet more than 13,000 years ago. Could this be proof that life once existed on Mars? Even more incredible, could this life that hitchhiked to Earth have been the beginning of life on our planet? It's a genesis theory called panspermia that suggests ET is staring back at you in the bathroom mirror, that life on Earth evolved from Martian microbes. It's a fascinating idea, but take it with a large grain of salt.
I think it's very much not proven that the things that they're looking at actually resulted from microbes on Mars. I think we have a much better chance when we bring back samples from different environments on Mars for actually looking at that. This has been a good test case, but I think the things they're talking about are too small. I don't think the chemistry really proves the case that these people are making.
Microbes in a rock aren't exactly what our popular culture has in mind when it imagines strange beings from another planet. Those slow-eyed alien grays from the TV and movie screens, the ones allegedly making personal visits to our friends and neighbors, have a lot more sex appeal. And though certainly profoundly intriguing, we cannot be sure that there are real extraterrestrials lurking in the memories of alleged alien abductees. However, the alien life forms scientists agree could exist on other places in our very own solar system might be the first pieces of a grander puzzle. When complete, it could amaze us with proof of alien worlds in our galaxy and the greater universe. We may be part of an astounding cosmic family tree.
Life is very hardy and it's very tenacious. And what I can say is, if it's out there and it's in our solar system, I think we'll find it. Maybe beyond our solar system. Who knows?
Take a stroll through your neighborhood toy store or novelty shop. You'd think we were the alien nation. The obsession with UFOs and ET visitors has overtaken our pop culture with all the zeal of a new religion. When you sip your latte from a cup with an alien gray on it, or wear a t-shirt that says the truth is out there, you're not only making a fashion statement, you're also making a nod to the approximately 50% of the American public who say they believe we've been visited by beings from other worlds.
Oh, I definitely believe in UFOs and aliens.
I had a friend once that claimed to have encountered an alien.
I feel that there's no scientific evidence for them in the universe.
We're from Pennsylvania.
And I don't think we have any aliens in Pennsylvania.
My grandmother used to say a funny thing when I lived in Kansas. She said, when you go out the back door, make sure you don't trip over the little green men.
Some of the stories are pretty unbelievable about people being abducted, but I think probably, maybe something like that has happened.
I don't know. And I'm actually pretty content in saying that I don't know.
I think they come to explore us.
I would love to be abducted, so if they're listening out there, please, I'm waiting for my ride.
We seem to be so fascinated by aliens, and we see it in the movies and on TV shows. Probably tells us something about humans' desire for the unknown, or perhaps we feel a kind of cosmic loneliness and we're hoping that we're not alone in the universe.
The ongoing debate raging over the existence of aliens has firmly divided the camps of ufologists, who are convinced they're already here, and mainstream scientists. For the latter, the hunt for alien life became a legitimate scientific effort when, in 1960, the young astronomer Frank Drake conducted the first microwave radio search for signals from other solar systems. He later founded SETI, which stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
And we all know that it would be the most wonderful adventure to learn of the creatures of other worlds, what they're like, what their histories have been, how they live, what their technology might be. It's just one of the most fascinating things, not just to scientists, but to everybody. Of course, we have now entered an era where we have a real chance to detect other civilizations.
Scientists don't expect to find anything pop culture recognizes as an alien within our own solar system. What does intrigue them, however, is whether the alien life forms we may find on other planets and moons could evolve from a primitive state elsewhere in the universe. Whether over millions of years, aliens capable of using tools could fashion a complex civilization.
I'm very doubtful that intelligent, spacefaring, technological creatures have evolved on other worlds. I know this sounds somewhat heretical with the vast universe we live in, but it seems to me that intelligence is not necessarily selected for. It's not the inevitable result of evolution. 50 billion species have evolved, and only one on Earth has this technological capacity.
I personally think that this issue of whether life can arise in other environments in the solar system will probably be answered in the next generation. And if the astronomy capabilities continue to progress, we may even have similar answers about some other star systems within a generation. That's being somewhat optimistic.
Dr. Johnson's optimism is already being borne out. April 1999. An especially stunning announcement comes from the world's most prolific planet hunters. 3 teams of astronomers have discovered the first solar system beyond our own. Because so far we can't directly see the planets with telescopes, they were identified by the gravitational path of the star around which they orbit. The telltale wobble is caused by the gravitational tug of at least 3 planets orbiting Upsilon Andromeda, a star very like our sun, 44 light years away.
I think it's both a major step and a baby step. I think it's a baby step because we have so much further to go. I think it's a major step because it has, I really think, confirmed, at least in my mind and the mind of many people, that, as I say, these solar systems are common, and this is going to give us an enormous impetus to look at other nearby stars in much greater detail.
Looking for these things involves looking at a level of faintness that we have never tried to reach before. And so the first thing that we have to go for are extremely large telescopes, and we started making those at the university some 20 years ago now.
Mount Hopkins, outside Tucson, Arizona, has been home to the Multiple Mirror Telescope Observatory. 6 perfectly aligned mirrors that 20 years ago were cutting edge, state-of-the-art. Now, with enormous advances in computer and telescope technologies, the multiple mirrors have been replaced by a single mirror. It increases the power of this observatory by a factor of 2.5, and will allow it to examine more astral targets at greater distances than almost any other telescope on Earth. The telescope's 21.5-foot mirror was made at a specialized facility, the Stewart Mirror Lab in Tucson. There, they also crafted twin 27-foot mirrors to go into an even bigger telescope operated by the University of Arizona. Nick Wolf is convinced his mirrors will discover other worlds.
We had to build a special facility to make the telescope mirrors because there was nobody else making the mirrors that we needed at that time. And that telescope will be sensitive enough to detect the kind of dust that we have in the solar system, but around a star that is up to 50 light years away.
But even these exquisitely made instruments have their limitations. To see further and even more precisely, we have to get above our atmosphere, escape the bonds of Earth, and view the universe from space itself. NASA has an ambitious agenda of projects for launch over the next 2 decades to succeed the Hubble Space Telescope, which will finish its work in 2010. Using new technologies, they will probe the depths of the universe with greater power than ever before. The first of these assignments is a mission that's a mouthful, the Space Infrared Telescope Facility, SIRTIF for short. It's the first major project of the NASA Origins program. Infrared telescopes observe stars and planets by measuring their heat signatures. In pursuing clues to the birth and evolution of galaxies, stars, and planets, SIRTIF will also be identifying possible homes to alien life forms. The Next Generation Space Telescope, or NGST, with a launch date of 2007, has on paper the capacity to gather 9 times more light than the Hubble telescope. The view it brings back to Earth should revolutionize our thinking about the universe. Perhaps the most exciting mission on the drawing board so far is the Terrestrial Planet Finder. Set to launch around 2015, TPF will use 4 separate but tightly aligned mirrors, reducing the glare of stars by a factor of more than 100,000. It will examine the hundreds of stars closest to Earth to find every nearby Earth-size or larger planet, some perhaps harboring alien life.
But I think the greatest contribution that TPF will make is help us to understand how the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology come together to create life. TPF actually will be an experiment not so much for the astronomers as for the biologists. If we can give the biologists 20 or 30 planets where life is evolving in ways that are totally different from the way they're evolving on Earth, that will really advance our understanding of life itself.
The data collected from NASA's big new telescopes will be analyzed for signs of the basic building blocks needed to spawn alien life forms.
At that point, life is not just a single event that happened once in the entire universe, but it's actually a phenomenon that we can study, investigate, that's happening all over the universe. And in that sense, it's a paradigm shift. Many people believe that life is widespread in the universe, but that's very different from knowing it and starting to study it beyond our own Earth.
If we ever do make such a discovery, it would be as revolutionary as Copernicus and Galileo discovering that Earth is not the center of the universe. Despite the UFO and alien abduction proponents, who believe extraterrestrials are already here, this is the scientific revelation that would irrevocably alter our thinking, our faith, our planetary way of life. In New York City, at the First National Alien Abduction Conference, alleged abductees and researchers mingled, gossiped, and attended exhibits and lectures to learn the latest news of sightings and kidnappings.
The important reason for bringing this up is Betty, under hypnosis, described how she's asked the aliens, the captain, the leader, where he was from.
This was also all consciously recalled. Hypnosis was neither used nor contemplated, unlike the case of many abduction stories since, as we all know.
The reliability of testimony taken under hypnosis is at the crux of the debate over the reality of alien encounters.
Hypnosis is, of course, a complication in the investigation of abduction reports, and hypnosis can be misused. In my observation and the observation of psychological professionals who have watched Bud Hopkins at work, for example, Hopkins does a good job.
The issue of following this up and looking into it using hypnosis, I'm curious about your feelings about that subject, of exploring this further.
Through hypnosis or any other method, I would actually be very interested. Because I'm conflicted. I really feel like something happens, has been happening, and will continue to happen that's not precedented by everyday life. But I'm also aware of the activity of my imagination.
Skeptics argue that the pervasive influence of TV, movies, books, and magazines about UFOs and aliens, and leading questions from investigators, are responsible for the elaborate stories spun.
The basic complaints that are made are that somehow I'm implanting these ideas, and that somehow or other we're leading the witness, and these witnesses are just sort of simple-minded pieces of putty in the hands of the hypnotist. Well, the point is that can be easily tested. All you have to do is to come to sit on a session and see whether, in fact, that's happening.
That first instant will come clearly back to your mind, your memory. 1, you're lying in bed. Something is going to change. 2, right on the edge now. 3.
Hopkins suggests that the sheer volume and similarity of accounts he's accumulated is proof that some other outside force is at work.
Just tell me your emotions, your feelings, what you sense.
Scared.
Scared. At the time, this was very scary. You were scared, you wanted to go out the window. But I want to find out what you're scared of. I said you may see something, you may hear something, you may just sense something. Tell me, what is the first thing that you notice? Feel my hand.
Something moving.
Something moving. How far away is he from you? Like 5 feet?
No, he's right in front of me.
Okay, now, so you get a good look at him now.
Yeah.
Describe him to me.
Small body, thin, can see his ribs.
Is that through his shirt? You can see
No,
it?
he looks naked. No hair. Smooth head. He doesn't say anything. He's just looking at me.
You're going to feel a great sense of relief, too. One of the things about that relief is that you realize that parts of your life, memories of whatever they are really, but clear memories, have been hidden from you or taken from you, and now you have them back.
Hopkins claims that details his hypnotized subjects tell him could not have been picked up from TV or movies, nor are they suggested by him.
A person describes being in a room and aliens and so forth, and they say the only furniture in the room is a table. And I'm saying, now this is important. From where you're standing, can you just see 2 legs of the table or all 4 legs of the table? Now, no one has ever described a 4-legged table in the UFO experience. I'm using a simple example. This can be multiplied 1,000 times because an investigator with experience knows what the patterns are and can ask very subtle leading questions.
For 2 centuries, hypnosis has been an effective tool in treating pain, phobias, and other forms of mental illness. But no one really knows how it works.
Throughout history, hypnosis has been used for one purpose, and that is to implant memories in people. For example, if you came to me and wanted to quit smoking, I would hypnotize you and tell you, you don't want to smoke anymore. You no longer like cigarettes. And you would walk out not wanting to smoke. So the idea of hypnosis is to put ideas in people's heads. This is something that seems to have been lost on researchers of abductions because they're inadvertently putting ideas in people's heads, thinking that they're actually recovering them, but they're actually putting them in there.
According to the master mental wizard and entertainer known as the Amazing Kreskin, about 90% of the population is susceptible to hypnosis. Kreskin believes that hypnosis does not coax back repressed memories. It's nothing more than pure imagination, sparked by the power of suggestion.
Suggestibility is the capacity to experience ideas. It has nothing to do with people who are fantasy prone or trance prone or go into dissociative states or multiple personalities. It's the idea that if you and I are exposed to a series of thoughts that we have feelings, people who empathize with others are usually more suggestible. People who are less suggestible are people who go to a restaurant and order the same meal every time and have a very rigid kind of lifestyle, basically because they don't want to open themselves to outside ideas and thoughts.
On a hot summer's Sunday in Nyack, New York, Kreskin offers a demonstration. He says he can use the power of suggestion to implant false memories of alien abductions. These volunteers have not been informed of what he is about to do. In his questioning of the volunteers, none of whom have ever had a close encounter, Kreskin subtly asks questions that will linger and then explode into seemingly real events.
You just took a walk outside. How have you changed since you walked outside?
Well, I feel really excited. It triggered a memory that I had when I was about 2 years old, and
You never knew it before now?
no, but I remember it as it came into my mind. First, I walked to the garden and saw like a Madonna figure with water coming out, and I started getting chills. I started getting feelings, and I felt kind of quiet and contemplative. And it made me think of a time when I was sleeping in my Aunt Tootsie's house outside of Philadelphia.
How old were you?
I was 2 years old, and I woke up and I felt something behind me, and I was afraid to turn around and look at it. I just had a bad feeling, and when I looked around, it was an alien-like creature, and what woke me up was that he pinched me. I felt like he put a needle in me or something like that in my behind, and when I turned around, I looked at him, and he stood there smiling at me almost impishly. But he came again and again and again and again, and he would talk to me, but he wouldn't talk to me with his mouth. He would talk to me just like through his consciousness, and He would tell me that in my 50s, I would write a book of the messages that he would send to me. And it's so ironic because I just started a professional writing course, 6 credits that I'm taking and working fervently on. And he's come many times to me, even as an adult, but I don't really recall what he says. He's there, I wake up and see him, and I go back to sleep. I just remember.
What I did is I tapped into what was within them. I did not define the boundaries.
How did they speak to you? Verbally?
Because in cartoons, you see what the E.T. figures look like, even in children's comic books. So there's nowhere on the face of the earth anymore that you will be able to avoid the contamination of a preconceived notion of what it looks like to have an alien or an alien abductor.
In the majority of cases that I've looked at, abduction memories actually start with a dream. A person has an unusual dream, and then they tell a friend, and the friend says, you know, that dream sounds like something I read in this book, and you may have been abducted. And then if they believe that, they'll call up an abduction researcher. The abduction researcher will say, yes, if you had a dream like that, it means that this really happened. And after you undergo hypnosis and recall the dream again, you will recall it as a real experience.
Clear memories have been hidden from you or taken from you, and now you have them back.
And as that progresses, abductees find it very difficult to tell the difference between their dreams and what really happened to them. In general, these people are very sincere. They truly believe this happened to them. They've been convinced of that through the media, through the so-called researchers, through hypnotherapy. They've been led to believe something that is not true.
I feel that I've been a completely objective and open-minded person about this. I had no agenda to start with. So where I've ended up is where I feel the data has led me.
Some believe we may never meet an advanced alien civilization. Some insist that we will. And some are adamant that we already have. In our lifetime, the most radical news of aliens may come not from proof of UFOs or alien abductions, but when we're able to prove that there's even rudimentary life beyond Earth. Meanwhile, the secret thrill, or even the tinge of fear that keeps our imaginations alive to the possibilities, will persevere. Nothing can stop a good story. March 13th, 1997. It's about 8:30 on a clear desert night in Phoenix, Arizona. There are more people outside than usual, hoping to get a good look at the Hale-Bopp comet. What they see instead is an astral phenomenon even more staggering, one that defies common sense or ready explanation.
It was almost like a computer graphic.
Yeah, and it was so big too, you know, and it didn't make a sound. It was like 2 football fields or something. It was very, very big.
About 2 football fields long.
Yeah.
I had a Polaroid camera, but that wouldn't have done anything. I had no camcorder. I had no film in my 35 millimeter. So I said to Bobby, go into record mode. Don't miss anything. This is not normal.
The Lee family, with hundreds of others, claimed to have seen a craft so big it blotted out the stars. Others saw a series of orbs that glowed with a bright yet subtle light.
Take a look at this. Nobody could deny that something was there.
Oh my God.
Because it was independently seen and independently photographed by people who had not previously been in contact with each other.
Seeing is believing. And I've seen it, and I've documented it on film.
But I'm a believer now. I believe somebody else is visiting us from somewhere.
These are some kind of beings from other worlds, from other planetary systems that have such advanced technology that they have conquered vast distances.
And the question arises, if they exist, what do we do about it? Well, the obvious answer is you try to go visit them. And so we're starting to take the first basic technology and research steps today that might enable us someday to go visit other planets like the Earth.
That March evening in Arizona, something was out there, all right. There were just too many eyewitnesses for there not to be. Onlookers describe a boomerang or carpenter square-shaped vehicle, huge and soundless. Yet whether this was the mother of all UFO sightings or something else remains an enigma. Since the end of World War II, UFO sightings have become so frequent, everyone knows what the letters stand for. Yet a UFO isn't necessarily an alien craft. It's literally an unidentified flying object. Witnesses assume flying saucers, little green men, aliens. Meanwhile, at places like NASA and the European Space Agency, scientists really are building futuristic spacecraft and dreaming up new types of intergalactic technology that rival anything in the pages of science fiction. Actually traveling beyond our solar system to another star is so profoundly difficult that it flies in the face of all we currently know about physics. But scientists press on, hoping for breakthrough discoveries. The idea of aliens visiting Earth perplexes them. If, so far at least, we can't get there from here, how could they get here from there, unless they possess saucer technology far beyond our grasp?
People are open-minded, receptive, even believing in UFO reports, and sometimes even the most exotic UFO reports, while scientists continue to remain somewhere between cautious and actively hostile.
A lot of people don't really understand how science operates. A scientist really can't write or claim something that can't be proven. And UFOs are definitely fit into the category of something that's never been proven.
And yet, there they were in 1997, the so-called Phoenix Lights.
Whoever put on this grand event, and I consider it a grand event, they made the choice of selecting a place where there's a broad range of people, a broad range of societies represented here, from truck drivers to lawyers to doctors, military people, retired and active, aerospace people, and uniformly experiencing something or seeing something they'd never seen before. In most cases, had little or no interest, in fact, even would ridicule the belief in UFOs.
I must say, first off, that both my husband and I were both physicians, both skeptics. When these huge amber lights pop up in the sky, you can't take your eyes off them. They are mesmerizing. They're different than anything you've ever seen. They look like spinning balls of energy, and they're rock solid in the sky. I'd like somebody to tell me what it is.
The lights were seen across a 300-mile corridor, stretching from the Nevada border through Phoenix to the northern edge of Tucson. Mike Krisden was another of the fortunate few who captured the sight on videotape.
And I started to photograph this thing, videotape it, and while I was doing that, another light appeared to the west of it. And as I trained on these lights, all of a sudden this entire sequence of lights came on and formed an arc. They remained steady for like 2 or 3 minutes, and they slowly went out one at a time, and not in the same order that they went on.
That evening, trucker Bill Greiner is hauling a load of cement up the Mount Verde Valley Mountain, on his way to Glendale, Arizona. The sight that greets him at the summit is unlike anything he has ever seen.
I was looking for a comet. I never did see the comet, but I saw two very unusual bright lights out in the distance.
Griner pulls over for a better look. Suddenly, he's startled by a burst of activity from nearby Luke Air Force Base.
And all of a sudden I heard two aircraft come flying out of there where they had the afterburners on the gas gears. There's huge flames coming out of them. Two of them took off. They both flew into the north, made a real sharp turn right behind me, like right over where I was standing. And the two lead jets went right up toward the object that was over the base. And before they got to the object, this thing shot up and disappeared. Just went straight up, disappeared instantly. And the only thing that I can relate that even resembles it is if you've ever seen Star Trek, when they go into warp, they disappear, that's it. Well, before all this happened, if somebody would have said anything about this, I would have said you were nuts. But I know two things. The government, which is Luke Air Force Base, they knew what was going on that night because they sent the jets up after whatever the hell it was. That's fact number one. And fact number two, what I saw ain't from around here, period.
A CNN Time magazine poll at the time of the Phoenix Lights incident found that 22% of adult Americans believe intelligent beings from other planets have made contact with Earth.
I think that the Phoenix Lights event clearly is a watershed. This is a significant event of what is in store for the future.
Issues in science are not settled by taking a vote or taking a poll. There either are facts or there are not, and the scientific community has to go with where the facts lie.
About 40 miles from the Phoenix Valley is the Barry Goldwater Gunnery Range, site of military exercises and flare drops. According to the authorities, just such an exercise was taking place the night of March 13th.
The Air Force went up and dropped an illumination flare. This particular one is phosphorus, and it drops, it's kind of like a little propeller, like paper. It drops very slow, it burns real slow, and it's very bright.
Hey, Sue, take a look at this.
And all the people that's in the Phoenix area would see these lights, and they come down real slow at a far distance, and they would swear they were UFOs.
Oh, my God.
It would be very difficult for me to see you dropping flares randomly, to have 4 flares stretched out across the sky that can be in a perfectly straight line, and to stay there. That's what's unusual.
The video that I saw a quick glimpse of was intriguing, so I'm going to order a full investigation of this through DPS. We're going to make all the necessary inquiries, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to find out if it was a UFO or whether it was an IFO, which stands for Unidentified Flying Object.
When something like this becomes big in the media and everybody hears about it, and everybody immediately jumps to the conclusion that it must be spaceships hovering there, and it caused quite a bit of stir and a local reaction and political upheaval.
This just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
Anyone who came up with a hypothesis say that aliens were visiting us, it's not up to anyone else to disprove it, it's up to them to prove it. And I, as a skeptic, would say, well, where's your proof? And he would say, well, here's an eyewitness testimony from somebody. Well, we know that eyewitness testimony just by itself without corroboration is not terribly reliable. That's not how science operates, because you can find all kinds of people who claim they've seen angels, they've seen fairies, they've seen the Loch Ness Monster. And we certainly can't believe in all those things without proof. The burden of proof is always on somebody who claims that these visitations or anything extraordinary is occurring.
One way to look at the problem is to examine the physical realities of intergalactic space travel. Skeptics and believers alike should think about what it would take for a spaceship from any planet to actually fly across the Milky Way. A handful of scientists and engineers is dedicated to just this question, although they would never want to have their names associated with the more radical and vehement UFO advocates. The subject is unavoidable, and to a degree, irresistible.
When you give a lecture on interstellar travel, many, many people believe that, hey, the answer is out there, it's being kept secret. Why are we talking about solar sails? Why are we talking about lasers or antimatter or fusion? There's anti-gravity. There's space warps sitting there in Area 51 at Roswell. All we have to do is get the military to bring it up. I don't think it's that easy, unfortunately.
NASA has a search with large telescopes looking for other planets like the Earth, potentially, that might be out there. And the question arises, if they exist, what do we do about it? And so we're starting to take the first basic technology and research steps today that might enable us someday to go visit other planets like the Earth.
If alien starships really are shooting across the cosmos, the technologies used are immense. We can get some inkling of what's involved by turning the tables and trying to figure out ways for us to make the trip to other solar systems. As scientists at NASA and in the aerospace industry will tell you, it's not as easy as hitching a ride on the Enterprise.
One thing that happens in television and movies is there's a gross underestimate of the difficulty of space travel. One analogy I like is if you build a modern rocket ship, something like the space shuttle, such a spacecraft could circle the Earth in 90 minutes. We do that all the time. If we launch a payload towards the moon, it takes approximately a week to make a round trip to the moon. With this technology, we could make a one-way trip to Mars in about 9 months. If we sent it to the nearest star and maybe had a swing by of Jupiter to pick up a little bit of extra energy, about 70,000 years, give or take a little.
In talking about how you would actually get to interstellar travel within a human lifetime so that one person could actually make the trip and come back and report it, you could never do that with a chemical rocket. It just doesn't have enough power, it doesn't operate long enough, you would have to carry too much fuel to ever get up to anything close to the speed of light. It's impossible.
Alternatives must be found. A journey of light years begins with baby steps, tentatively seeking alternative means of faster, more efficient propulsion. Engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, demonstrate how an interstellar probe pulled along by a solar sail nearly half a mile wide could break all records for distance and speed through space. Its major thrust would come from heading directly into the sun, then swinging around it at close range. The energy of sunlight, photons, would billow the solar sail and fling it into space. In the early stages, such a sail couldn't reach other stars, but it will be an initial step to get us beyond our own solar system, what's called an interstellar precursor mission. Chuck Garner is a scientist at the Jet Propulsion Lab. He's working to develop revolutionary gossamer-thin materials that could waft a solar sail across the heavens at breathtaking velocities.
This is a carbon fabric. And it's a very, very lightweight carbon fabric that we think will achieve the kind of performance that you need in order to make solar sails for interstellar probe-type missions. What's important about this fabric, first of all, is that even though it's very lightweight, it's stiff. Now you can let this go, and you see it's just not that much different from the density of air.
A solar sail has its limitations. The further away from the sun, the less powerful the photons pushing the sail forward. Other proposals utilize the solar sail idea, but concentrate the propulsive power in a more focused beam, like a laser. Parts of this technology owe their birth to classified work conducted for the Defense Department's anti-missile Star Wars program.
The beauty of using a laser propulsion system is that, in effect, we're taking most of the rocket engine off of the rocket. We're putting it on the ground or maybe in Earth orbit. where it's easy to build it, to maintain it, to repair it. That means the vehicle itself gets a lot lighter. It also means, in the case of beaming momentum in the form of light to the vehicle, that we don't need a lot of extra propellant to drag along.
Light in weight, yes. But the sail would have to be of enormous size, the laser of tremendous power. To get to our nearest star neighbor, Alpha Centauri, would require a sail 60 miles wide, a laser with trillions of watts of electricity. There are alternatives.
Another option that we're examining for interstellar precursors, because it's a technology that we have in hand today, is using a fission system to take advantage of decades of work that we've had in nuclear fission, to use that as a power supply to drive our electric thrusters, our ion engines, to go to nearby interstellar space.
The prototype of such a system is hurtling through space at this very moment. The product of nearly half a century of work, Deep Space One, heading toward a close encounter with an asteroid, is the first NASA spacecraft that, once launched into space, uses an ion engine instead of chemicals to propel it deeper and deeper into the solar system. It's a tantalizing glimpse into the future.
The way I like to think of it is Deep Space One is turning science fiction into science fact. And the science fact now is that we have new capabilities, we can do new things that for the previous 40 years of exploring space we've only dreamed about.
An ion propulsion system is a rocket engine that, instead of burning chemical fuels like a regular rocket, this ion engine takes a gas, in this case xenon, makes it electrically charged, and shoots those ions out the back at a very high speed. And the higher the speed that you shoot them out, the less fuel that you need to get where you want to go.
The ion propulsion system, although it's 10 times more efficient than conventional chemical propulsion systems, has a paradox, and that is it's exceedingly gentle. In fact, the thrust from the ion propulsion system is comparable to what I feel holding this single piece of paper in my hand. That is, the ion engine pushes on the spacecraft as hard as this single piece of paper pushes on my hand. But with time, the effect of the thrust really builds up. It's what I like to call acceleration with patience.
Deep Space One can't get us to another star, but it's an excellent start and a heartening example. Just decades ago, such a technology was deemed impossible. Perhaps other breakthrough space technologies, ideas that we today consider difficult to achieve, even far-fetched, are just around the cosmic corner. Though most scientists are highly dubious, not all are totally dismissive of the claims of UFO proponents. They're curious. After all, name one astrophysicist or engineer who wouldn't be interested if someone revealed credible proof of a technology capable of intergalactic travel. Dr. Bernard Heisch, a specialist in the use of solar power in space, was on a committee headed by Professor Peter Sturrock of Stanford University that investigated the UFO question.
We published a report that was a survey of the members of the American Astronomical Society. And interestingly, about 80% of the astronomers, when they were expressing their opinions confidentially or anonymously, came down on the side that either certainly, probably, or possibly the UFO phenomenon ought to be studied.
Dr. Heisch pursues other unusual scientific interests as well. The wildest focus of his imagination concentrates on something most people aren't even aware exists: energy in a vacuum. If you take everything out of a given space, all the air, matter, heat, light, everything, amazingly, you will discover that there is still some energy left, the so-called energy of the vacuum, known as zero-point energy.
The zero-point field is a background sea of energy that fills the universe, fills everything in the universe that quantum laws say has to exist. And I can illustrate it with a little oscillator. You have a classical oscillator, something bouncing up and down on a rubber band or a spring. Eventually they will come to rest because of frictional forces. Now, if you have an oscillator subject to quantum laws, it'll never come to rest entirely. And that means that all of space will be filled with a certain amount of electromagnetic energy because of those quantum laws. And all of that added together is a zero-point field.
Finding and controlling that kind of energy could provide us with a radical new fuel source, one that would be extracted from outer space itself for a journey to the stars. Another potential source of power has an equally sci-fi ring to it: antimatter, a colossal fuel generated by the creation of the universe itself.
It's another particle. It's just another elementary particle that we can produce in laboratories, that we've detected in deep space, that we know is out there. It's another mystery in and of itself. We don't know where is all the antimatter in the universe.
At the beginning of time, in the gargantuan detonation of the Big Bang, matter and antimatter came into existence. For every electron, proton, or atom of matter, there is an equal and opposite amount of antimatter. But they cannot exist in the same space. When they come together, they explode, annihilating one another in a flash of energy. A large matter-antimatter reaction would dwarf any thermonuclear explosion ever ignited on Earth. If this reaction can be harnessed, a rocket engine of unprecedented force could be created.
Antimatter-matter annihilation is the highest energy density reaction that we know of. Problem with that is that the production, the entire world's production of antimatter today amounts to on the order of 10 nanograms, 10 to the minus 9 grams of antimatter per year. And that's just too small for us to really be able to do anything with from a propulsion standpoint. You might wonder, how about scaling up antimatter production? And that's conceivable, although it would be enormously expensive. So really, we don't know how to go to the stars. And we have some ideas of ways that could do it that don't violate physics, but they're all enormous technical and engineering challenges.
It's restless curiosity about the universe and the possibility of life on other planets that keeps these scientists and engineers going, despite the formidable obstacles. Most of them believe that, odds are, there are other forms of life, even other civilizations out there. Where most of them disagree with the UFO advocates is the issue of credible evidence of regular ET visits to Earth.
Personally, I'd love to believe that there's other life in the universe, but just looking at the vast distances involved, the energy required to get here, and the timescales, I'm very skeptical that we're being visited at this time by a civilization that we could even recognize as such.
Roswell. The touchstone event for all who study unidentified flying objects. The alleged crash of one or more alien craft in the New Mexican desert happened more than 50 years ago, but only came to wide attention with the 1980 publication of a popular book on the subject.
It's almost like a shrine of Fatima or something like that for those who believe in the legend of UFOs and alien visitations. A place you can go and visit and imagine what might have happened there.
Physicist and UFO lecturer Stanton Friedman says aliens have the technology and are using it to visit Earth. A co-author of the book that made Roswell ground zero for ufologists, he relates what a local rancher told him about what happened there in 1947.
And he finds an area more than half a mile long, a few hundred feet wide, strewn with strange wreckage. There were pieces, I-beams they called them, small pieces, with strange symbols that you couldn't break, couldn't cut, couldn't burn, very lightweight. There was extraordinarily strong, lightweight material that you couldn't break through with a sledgehammer. There was a foil-like material that you could fold and fold again, and it would unfold, but you couldn't scratch it, couldn't cut it. This is weird stuff. When the wreckage arrives in Fort Worth, Texas, General Roger Ramey, head of the 8th Air Force, had already received a call from his boss telling him to cover it up, I don't care how you do it, send some of that wreckage up here today with one of your Colonel Couriers, and never talk about it again.
Well, there really isn't a lot of mystery to what happened at Roswell. If you just take the facts that we're reasonably certain of, we know that there was a project called Project Mogul that was in operation elsewhere in New Mexico at that time. They were launching balloons that were intended to be high-altitude reconnaissance balloons. They were testing the use of balloons as an intelligence gathering device. This was before there were any satellites in orbit. They were testing the feasibility of using high-altitude balloons for keeping track of what the Russians were up to. Actually, it was a little bit of a cover-up. They didn't want to say, this is a device that we built because we're trying to snoop on the Russians, and this thing crashed in the field and the farmer found it. But it was a balloon, and that's what was found. With 5 pounds of tinfoil and sticks is the most amazing thing. Imagine trying to build a spaceship with 5 pounds of tinfoil and sticks.
Gee whiz.
There's no denying that the notion of alien spacecraft has become an indelible part of our popular culture. In addition to the numerous sightings of flying saucer-shaped objects, there have been many reported sightings of V-shaped objects, not unlike those seen by the witnesses of the Phoenix Lights. In August 1951, 4 college professors from Lubbock, Texas, reported a formation of lights flying very fast. A few days later, a Lubbock student took these pictures of mysterious lights in a double V formation. Since 1991, coinciding with a solar eclipse, Mexico City has become a hotbed of UFO activity, with many photos and videotapes produced as evidence. Many are faked, others are optical illusions or identifiable astral phenomena.
There's never been any case where any UFO stayed around and left behind incontrovertible evidence that would be left by a real object, such as an airplane or a meteor or a rocket that crashed or something like that. It just never happens. There's lots of things up in the sky a person could see. There's bright planets, there's bright stars. There's unusual aircraft seen under unusual illumination conditions. We all have a set of expectations of what UFOs are supposed to look like, what they're supposed to do, what they're supposed to contain. So when people see this ambiguous bright light that's out there, well, then all these preconceptions come into play. It's almost like a cosmic Rorschach blot. You project into it what you think it should contain.
In the UFO movement, many reject official explanations of sightings as natural phenomena, optical illusions, or military aircraft or flares. They believe such stories are shady alibis, proof that the government has much to hide.
UFOs to me are an interesting topic. I do know friends, even in the scientific community, who are very positive about them. I have no better explanation for this than anybody else does. But I don't feel that there is a large conspiracy underway at Roswell, New Mexico. The reason for that is the government of the United States isn't capable of keeping a president's private life secret, and it is not capable of protecting nuclear secrets. Why is it then that the United States government, in conjunction with every other government in the world, keeps this conspiracy going? You know, it just doesn't, to me, make sense.
Many who witnessed the Phoenix Lights in March 1997 scoff at the government claim that what they saw were flares being used in a training exercise. They suspect a cover-up, especially those who not only saw the lights, but who believe they observed some kind of spacecraft as well.
The event happened around 8:30 in the evening, and we're driving north through the desert, and in the northwestern sky was this incredible triangular formation of lights that stretched right across the sky. It was just huge. We pulled off the road with other people too to get out and look at it. We watched it for about 5 minutes. It crept across the sky about 30 miles an hour. It was completely silent. My wife saw lights go on and off, and she saw figures at windows. She saw people, whatever, at the windows. I didn't see that. I was looking at another part of the ship.
That night, Hal and I were coming home in the car, and Hal was going to look for the Hale-Bopp comet. And when I let him out of the car, the first thing he says to me, "Dad, what is that?" The first impression was it was like a carpenter's square with 5 lights set perfectly geometric in it, 1 in the tip and 2 on each side. It wasn't just sitting there, it actually was coming straight at us. It took probably about 15 seconds to pass over us. It seemed like a long time. Like I thought it was gonna stop. I don't know what everybody else thought. I thought it was gonna, because we had just seen, you know, it was like Independence Day.
Where it slows down over you, you know, and makes you feel like it's gonna drop something or pick you up or do something, you know?
You got the feeling looking at it. It had a purpose. It had a motive, and it almost like someone coming in for a little peek, a little look. Doesn't want to disturb, doesn't want to make a fuss, just secretly come in and secretly leave.
There's no explanation for this in our world here at all. It's hard for people to really grasp that. We humiliate ourselves sometimes telling people about this.
I could understand people having all kinds of experiences with this craft because of the way the air was electrically charged. It kind of woke you up. It kind of woke up. It was like it was pulling on your spirit almost. And some people have had a very religious experience. Some people felt they were looking at the face of God. It wasn't from this planet, not at all.
They really have a similar story to tell, which means that the outside aliens have all come from the same location. Or these people have all been exposed to the same lore that you and I know of as part of the UFO picture. Many people have seen close encounters of a third kind. The bottom line is that you can't find anyone today that has not been contaminated.
The entertainer and self-described mentalist known as the Amazing Kreskin believes that people are highly susceptible to the popular culture around them and to the power of suggestion. In Members of an Invited Audience, he first runs through a series of exercises to find participants who would be the most prone to suggestion.
You're going to be seeing in the sky forms, 3 forms that can be described as saucers, UFOs, or what have you. You will see them as you will see them. If someone else describes a silver one...
Well, they're coming up here now. Look, over here, look. You see? And they all have the 3 colors, and there are 4 of them over there.
I don't see them there.
Where do you see them?
I see them up here.
What color are
they're
they?
silver.
Keep watching
and they're
them.
spinning.
And the rest
Where do
of
you
you
see
here?
them?
They're see
Where are they now? I can't see, it's all foggy. But there's something behind there. Those lights are behind there.
What do you know?
They're in there. They're in there now.
How do you know they're in there?
I feel them. It's hot.
You can feel the difference. What I did is I tapped into what was within them. I did not define the boundaries of how they would hallucinate, because what I literally did with a few of them was to create hallucinations.
Hallucinations steeped in UFO mythology. Or perhaps people subconsciously saw what they wanted to see. That may be the case with the Phoenix Lights. Still, something was up there. Ed Ashley, who has worked most of his life in the military aviation business, thinks he knows what it was.
There was a rumor of an aircraft being built by a certain company that looked awful like a UFO, and it used an anti-static propulsion system or something like that, and it was built and designed in several shapes. After the Phoenix Light story came on the news, I called up a friend of mine, and not so many words over the phone, asked him, hey, was that you guys doing that? And he said, yeah.
The best information that I have from some amateur astronomers who witnessed it said that it was aircraft, apparently in a formation. The best estimate would be that this was a night refueling mission.
It's been conjectured, of course, that these are some kind of government craft. But if the reaction of the witnesses is any indication, and that's true, and our government has that kind of technology to inspire and uplift people, all I can say is God bless America.
It's not surprising that the rise of UFO phenomena in America coincided with the outbreak of the Cold War. There was great anxiety and dread fostered by our bitter military and outer space rivalry with the Soviet Union. Looming over all of us was the threat of thermonuclear destruction.
One of the themes of post-war culture is that we have unleashed the atom. And the world and what we can do to the world and to other people in the world is far beyond anything normal. And I think because of that, there is this huge sense of a force much more powerful than we are, that we fear, that maybe we trust, that we have hopes for, and it is so easy to put all of those feelings not into a human being, because humans are so small, but into something from outer space.
The Cold War also ushered in an era of hush-hush programs to develop high-flying reconnaissance craft and stealth fighters and bombers. Many believe top-secret tests of these incredible new technologies account for many UFO sightings.
In the early days of aerodynamic experimentation, there have been an almost infinite variety of shapes that have been tested. Some of those things have actually become airborne. Some of them have probably traveled around quite a lot, either under their own power or perhaps even as gliders, so that they would have moved in ways that were not considered normal by casual observers. It would be very easy for them to be interpreted as not of terrestrial origin.
The aircraft responsible for the greatest number of UFO mix-ups are the various generations of stealth bombers, fighters, and reconnaissance planes. Civilians aren't used to seeing oddly shaped aircraft performing strange maneuvers at 5 times the speed of sound.
I can remember several times being in the desert on some projects and getting off a shift and going to like a convenience store or something like that, and all of a sudden one of the airplanes will fly over that you were working on that nobody else knows about, and you hear some of the reactions like, what was that? Is that a UFO?
Highly confidential, advanced projects, such as stealth aircraft and who knows what else, are a murky area of the military and aerospace industry known as black ops. Ironically, the public's belief in UFOs may work to the advantage of these clandestine operations.
The Pentagon itself will not confirm or deny the existence of UFOs because it helps them in covering up some of their top secret projects. The Air Force Base might get some phone calls from, concerned citizens wondering what just flew over. And the Air Force would probably play a little stupid and say, yes, ma'am, where did you see it at? What's your name, your address, that kind of thing. What did you think it was? And then hang up the phone and then just laugh like hell. One of my duties for this company while I was out there, whenever they would conduct tests, I would do what was called diversionary tactics or countermeasures. Well, actually, they made all different kinds of, these flying models or kites that we called them, but they were not like any kites that we saw when we were kids. It really makes me laugh to this day because now I see a lot of footage in some of these UFO documentaries of these white lights flying up in the sky. People are swearing that they see UFOs, you know, but actually they're not. They're these guys down there with these big fishing poles waving these kites up in the sky, going back and forth.
Even if some of the sightings are of advanced U.S. military aerospace designs, the most fervent UFO adherents maintain that we cribbed the technology from the observation and recovery of alien spacecraft. Ed Levy thinks otherwise.
I've heard a lot of speculation about a human being just couldn't do that. And in that sense, someone saying that is absolutely right. A human being could not possibly do it. It takes at first hundreds and ultimately thousands of people, each possessing a little piece of specialized knowledge, all working in concert to develop these real exotic pieces of hardware.
As impressive as these feats of technology and sophisticated ingenuity are, they still can't hold a candle to the exotic knowledge required to span the cosmos. If other civilizations are visiting us, and if we are to have any hope of visiting them, the answer may lie not with mere flying machines, but in the phantasmagoric manipulation of space-time itself.
Oh, I definitely believe in UFOs and aliens.
Well, I really doubt all the sightings and all the TV shows that you see on the stuff. I really don't believe that that's real.
It was a ball of light, but it was super large.
No, I have not seen a UFO.
I saw another one in Kansas, and I saw one in Las Vegas for New Year's.
Yeah, I'm sure UFOs were here because there's so many pictures and so many stories.
I'm sure they saw something very real that they thought was a UFO, but who knows what it could be. I'd love to find out, actually.
I think we human beings always need to have some sense that there is a power greater than ourselves out there. Sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's reassuring. But the look and shape and feel of that power is very specifically related to technology. So it's very logical in that sense that the belief in aliens and UFOs exactly corresponds to us sending somewhat identifiable flying objects up into the stratosphere and beyond.
The technological abilities we possess at the dawn of this new millennium would dazzle the finest minds of ancient Greece and Rome. They would think us sorcerers, or even gods. So maybe an advanced civilization is visiting us today, using methods of propulsion and manipulating the fabric of space and time in ways we can only yet imagine.
We are technologically retarded on a cosmic scale. I mean, just down the street there are stars that are 1 billion years older than the sun. Look what we've done the last 100 years, no less 1,000 or 1,000,000. If they're coming here, they're more advanced than we are. The sky is not the limit. There is no limit. Every generation of scientists thinks they know all there is to know. And history tells us they're always wrong.
The laws of physics are daunting and currently impossible to break. For now, Albert Einstein's the presiding judge of the scientific equivalent of the People's Court, and he has set the rules.
One of the problems with relativity that Einstein found was that material objects can't travel at the speed of light. Furthermore, as you get closer and closer to the speed of light, you get very strange, very counterintuitive effects going on. They're completely against everyday experience, and yet they're very real. We have to design scientific instruments to take them into account. But basically, as you get very near the speed of light, your intrinsic mass begins to increase. So it takes more energy to go faster. But the faster you go, the more you weigh. So it takes more energy. And you very quickly get a snowballing effect to the point where any piece of mass, as you start getting very near the speed of light, essentially would take infinite energy to go at the speed of light.
In spite of the odds, the physical barriers, scientists are pushing ahead, seeking answers to gigantic questions. NASA's Breakthrough Propulsion Program is investigating not only such technologies as solar sails and antimatter engines, but theoretical possibilities that were once only the stuff of dreams. One possible method? Anti-gravity. But because that has too much of a Flash Gordon ring to it, scientists prefer the phrase gravity manipulation.
You can think of gravity manipulation as the possibility for thrusting without rockets, because if it turns out to be real, you can consider objects moving in space without having to eject mass. It gets away from the action-reaction kinds of thrust. So what we're looking for, if we really want to talk about interstellar travel, is somehow to manipulate gravity and perhaps the space-time fabric around the rocket to create a bubble around the rocket, a bubble of space-time. To the rocket and to the people in it, it's not traveling faster than the speed of light. But in fact, you're bending space to the point where in fact you are traveling farther than you could.
In 1994, Miguel Alcubierre astonished physicists everywhere by calculating a way to distort space in a manner that would allow warp speed travel, to literally expand the amount of space behind a starship while bunching it up ahead. Such an intergalactic travel technology, the warp or hyperspace drive of television and the movies, is thus, in theory at least, possible.
Warp drive is a catch-all term, I suppose, that alludes to the possibility of warping space and time so as to get round the light barrier. You can't move faster than the speed of light through space, but there's no restriction on how fast space itself can expand.
And you basically treat space in front of you and behind you like a rubber sheet. In front of you, you compress it. Behind you, you expand it. So that when you get where you're going, you just let everything snap back to normal, and now you have in effect moved much faster than the speed of light over a very long distance.
There's another theoretical way of getting out to the great beyond of space, one already celebrated in Hollywood science fiction: wormholes, tunnels in space-time that would be the cosmic equivalent of shortcuts. A wormhole is a place where gravity is so intense that space is ultimately reduced to an infinitely small point.
The idea of how a wormhole works is a little bit counterintuitive. One example that we often use is to take just a sheet of paper and bend it into sort of a U shape, where now if you're traveling the long way around through normal space, it takes many years to get, say, from Earth to Alpha Centauri or any other star. The wormhole basically takes a shortcut. It bypasses the long, slow path through normal space, so you're able to get there much closer. And in fact, in the extreme limit, you're warping space with the wormhole so strongly that the 2 points basically touch. It would almost be like opening a door on Earth and walking through the doorway, and now you're in Alpha Centauri.
The mysterious nature of this universe may someday be revealed and allow us to use its secrets to travel awe-inspiring distances. If we can dream of doing so, who knows? Aliens may have already made the imagined real, using advanced saucer technology to explore the cosmos, visiting neighboring planets like Earth.
If you look at past history, it tells us that every time that we've explored a new place and found a new place to populate and to use, we've advanced our civilization. I think that the same thing will happen as we go out into space. Even if it turns out that we are the only life form in the universe, the fact that we're going to go to these places and learn that is going to have an effect on us. And if in fact we went to these places and we found that there were other civilizations as well, it would totally revamp our thoughts on our place in the universe.
What seems impossible to us today may startle us with its reality tomorrow. We may travel to other worlds. Voyagers from other solar systems may travel to us, possessing knowledge honed by thousands of years of saucer tech experience, advanced beyond all human capabilities. In the decades and centuries to come, our intellects and imaginations will be challenged and thrilled as never before. It should be quite a ride.